A cold front sweeping across the Midwest isn't the only force shaking things up tonight. Mark Carney just delivered what can only be called a lesson in economic strategy, and Donald Trump's team is scrambling to respond. Reports suggest a high level of urgency at Mar-a-Lago right now. And here's the surprising twist. Warren Buffett has publicly stated that the United States may be learning what he described as a costly lesson about underestimating Canada. Let me walk you through what's happening. For months, Trump has been warning about potential tariffs on Canada, suggesting rates as high as 25% on certain Canadian goods. He's spoken about it repeatedly at rallies and on social media, arguing that Canada has taken advantage of American workers, following a familiar line of criticism. His advisors believed Canada would eventually concede, that Carney would come back to negotiate, and that Canada depended more on the United States than the other way around. That assumption appears to have been incorrect. Here's what Mark Carney did, and it's a notable approach. Instead of responding with matching tariffs or escalating tensions, Carney pursued a different path entirely. Over the past few months, he quietly worked on expanding trade relationships with multiple partners, including the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, and China. Some observers noticed these developments but assumed they were part of standard negotiation tactics, expecting Canada to return to talks with the United States. However, Carney's actions suggest he was building broader trade connections designed to reduce reliance on a single partner. Recently, Canada announced a series of agreements aimed at diversifying its trade relationships. Analysts estimate these changes could significantly reduce Canada's dependence on the United States over time. Canadian lumber, which is widely used by American construction companies, is increasingly being sold to other markets. Canadian pharmaceutical exports are gaining expanded access to European markets, and Canadian energy exports are being directed through new agreements with international buyers. Now, you might be wondering how this affects the United States. Here's where it becomes important. Warren Buffett commented in a recent interview that long-standing trade relationships can be disrupted when decisions are made without full consideration of the consequences. He emphasized that markets often respond in ways that can be costly. He also noted that many American industries, including manufacturing, construction, and automotive sectors, have built supply chains that rely heavily on Canadian resources. When those supply patterns shift, it can create challenges. Some companies are now adjusting to changes in availability and pricing. Canadian suppliers are continuing to fulfill existing agreements, but future contracts may increasingly involve other international partners. This shift reflects a broader change in how trade relationships are being structured. Let's look at some examples. The U.S. construction industry has projected rising material costs, partly due to changes in supply sources. Automotive manufacturers are navigating adjustments in parts sourcing as global trade patterns evolve. In the pharmaceutical sector, Canada plays a role in producing generic medications used in the United States, and shifts in distribution priorities can influence supply chains. Energy is another key area. While the United States produces significant energy domestically, certain regions have infrastructure connected to Canadian imports. Adjusting those systems takes time, and changes in trade flows can affect pricing and availability in the short term. State leaders in affected regions have raised concerns about how trade decisions impact local economies, highlighting the interconnected nature of North American supply chains. Meanwhile, Mark Carney has taken a measured tone in public statements. He has emphasized that Canada remains open to fair and balanced trade relationships, including with the United States, while also focusing on strengthening economic resilience. His approach reflects a long-term strategy rather than a short-term reaction. On the U.S. side, responses have varied. Some statements have downplayed the impact, while others have suggested further policy actions. Discussions about trade continue through official diplomatic channels. Warren Buffett's remarks have drawn attention because of his influence in the business world. When he speaks about economic trends, investors and executives often take note. Market activity has reflected adjustments as companies evaluate exposure to changing trade conditions. Investment patterns are also evolving, with attention shifting toward businesses positioned to benefit from new international agreements. Workforce trends are another factor. Professionals in industries like technology, engineering, and finance often consider economic stability when making career decisions, and changes in trade environments can influence those choices. This situation also has broader implications beyond economics. Trade relationships play a role in how countries are perceived globally. For decades, the United States has been a central player in North American trade, with Canada and Mexico closely integrated into its economic system. As trade dynamics evolve, other countries are observing how these relationships develop. International partners are exploring opportunities to strengthen ties with Canada, and discussions about expanding agreements are ongoing. This reflects a broader trend toward diversification in global trade. Mark Carney's background in finance, including leadership roles at major central banks, has shaped his approach. His strategy emphasizes diversification, long-term planning, and reducing vulnerability to external pressures. Economic models suggest that trade policies can have wide-ranging effects, influencing costs for businesses and consumers. Policymakers continue to debate how best to balance domestic priorities with international partnerships. In the United States, discussions about trade policy involve both economic and political considerations. Some lawmakers are exploring proposals related to how tariffs are implemented, reflecting concerns from business communities and regional economies. Agricultural sectors are also paying close attention, as Canada is an important market for American exports. Changes in trade relationships can have significant impacts on farmers and related industries. For consumers, trade policy can influence prices and product availability. Construction materials, vehicles, and medications are all affected by supply chains that cross national borders. Workers in industries connected to trade may also experience changes as companies adapt to new conditions. In Canada, the current developments are being viewed as an effort to strengthen economic independence and expand global partnerships. This approach is drawing attention internationally as an example of how countries can adapt to shifting trade environments. The broader question is how these changes will shape future global trade patterns. Some analysts see this as part of a longer-term shift toward diversified economic relationships, while others view it as a temporary adjustment. The United States and Canada continue to have strong economic ties, and there are opportunities to maintain cooperation while adapting to new realities. Moving forward, there are several possible paths. Policymakers could work toward updated agreements that reflect current conditions, or they could continue with existing strategies and observe how markets respond. The situation remains dynamic, with ongoing discussions and adjustments on both sides. One key takeaway is the importance of strategy, planning, and understanding complex economic systems. Trade relationships involve many interconnected factors, and decisions can have wide-reaching effects. Warren Buffett's comments highlight the idea that economic choices often come with long-term consequences, particularly when they involve established partnerships. Experts across the field of trade economics continue to analyze these developments, offering perspectives on how policies influence global markets. Their insights contribute to ongoing debates about the best approaches to international trade. As this story continues to unfold, it raises important questions about economic policy, global relationships, and the future of trade. What we're seeing is a reminder that adaptability and strategic thinking play a major role in navigating complex international systems. We'll continue to monitor updates as they emerge. For now, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing and enabling notifications for more updates.